Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome to your new favorite place on the internet. My name's Bella and I love talking about books, animes, K-dramas, literally anything that makes me happy. I love sharing with you guys. And today I really want to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of June, because I actually had a pretty good reading month. I read some really incredible books. I found a new favorite book. I found a couple of 4.5 stars, and there are definitely some books that I really want to recommend to you guys. So let's just do a quick overview of all of the books that I read this month. I do have some books that I read digitally, like on my Kindle, so this isn't the entire 18 books, but it's like a nice idea of what's waiting for us in this video. Okay, it is a little bit heavy and I'm a weak little girl. I can't hold that pile for too long. Before we get on to the books, I thought I would share some reading stats for the month. In these 18 books, I read a total of 6,106 pages, and I think it's actually a little bit more than that because there are some other books like Mrs. Anna Karenina that I have not finished, but I did read a considerable amount this month. But alas, I digress. I read 10 books physically, 1 as an ebook and 2 as an audiobook. I read thrillers, I read poetry collections, I read romance, philosophy, which took me for a spin, and I also read some manga. My average rating for the month was 4.03, so yeah, pretty good reading month. I did have a couple of duds here and there, and I will get to them, but overall I'm really happy with this reading month and I can't wait to talk to you guys about these books. So without further ado, let's talk about the very first book that I read this month, which was The Miracles of the Namiya General Store. Oh my goodness, like I cannot begin to explain the love that I have for this book and all of the emotions that I went through reading this story. I read this book for the Reading Translated Fiction for a Week challenge, and I was oh so unprepared for how this book was going to make me feel. This book had me crying, smiling, laughing. It had me reevaluating my life. It also served as a reminder that life is beautiful despite everything, and because of that, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This book came at a time where I was feeling so sad and depressed and lonely and hopeless, and because of that I feel like its impact on me was incredible. It was just truly an unforgettable reading experience. So if you've never heard of this book before, please let me have the honor of introducing you to it. This book revolves around this general store where time seems to stand still. When you're inside the Namiya General Store, you can actually communicate with the past via letters. So we're following these 3 different characters that are all in different timelines, and somehow, even though they don't even know each other in real life, they're connected through this general store. And basically, okay, like how can I begin to explain this book? Because one of the things that I really don't like about myself is that when I love something so much, it is so hard for me to talk about it in a way that does it justice. Like I can't really fully explain why I love it so much and why it's so important, but I'm trying my best, so I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just going to be all over the place, and I hope that's fine with you because that's kind of like how my brain works. So anyways, the original owner of this general store, he told the people that he was going to be giving out advice. So if anybody had any issues, any problems that they didn't really know how to handle, they could write him a letter and he would try his best to help them. And these problems ranged from I need help with my math homework to my boyfriend is dying and I don't know how to move on with my life. So we definitely have an interesting combination of different problems and different situations, but the owner always tries his best to help them and to give them advice that may help them move on. And I just really love the author's ability to delve into the complexities of human life and also discuss themes like love and life and loss, and do it in such a beautiful way that it has you crying at 2 a.m. because that's literally where I was. It's an incredible look into the impact that we can have on other people's lives in the simplest and smallest of ways. And also, I think I already mentioned it, but it serves as such a kind reminder that beauty is everywhere around us, in the little things, in the big things, in the people around us, and that it is just very important to love and be loved. And even though life sucks at times, and sometimes it can be extremely hard to wake up and do whatever it is that you need to do, life is worth living. And I think that's an incredibly important message. And the fact that I read this at a time where I needed to hear those words the most, it just made me extremely emotional. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking about this book before I just burst into tears on camera. But I really hope I did a good job at like trying to tell you guys how much this book means to me. And hopefully I made it sound a little bit interesting so that you guys would want to pick it up as well. And if you do end up reading it, please let me know so that we can cry together about it, because I just loved this book. So yeah, let's move on. The next two books I accidentally read back to back, and I kind of wish I hadn't done that because these books messed me up. They ruined me, but like in a good way. I don't really know what that says about me. Maybe I have some self-destructive tendencies, but I don't really want to think about that too much. Feel free to psychoanalyze me, but honestly, they made me question everything that I thought was true. Yeah, it messed me up. These two books are Nausea by Jean-Paul Sartre and The Stranger by Albert Camus. This and this. They are both written by two philosophers who have a very similar thesis, which is the fact that life is meaningless. Actually, things don't happen for a reason. All of these bad things don't actually have any reasoning behind them. That's just life. And, you know, being alive, breathing, being on this earth at the same time as somebody else has no meaning. There is no destiny, there is no fate, there's just absurdity. That's basically the thesis of these two philosophers, and they had me questioning every single aspect of my life. And you know, sometimes that's a good thing because you shouldn't be too comfortable with your life. You should always be second guessing what you think is true, and you should be challenging the norms and whatever. But I was in a very weakened state of aliveness. I had to be handled with care, and these two books are very much on the tough love side of things. These were just a crazy journey that I am so glad that I went on. I just wish somebody would have warned me that these were going to provoke this huge existential crisis within me. These two bad boys delve deep into existentialism and human nature, the human condition, albeit in a darker and bleaker way than Namiya Store did. In Nausea, we have a character who is so disgusted by his own existence that he grows physically ill. Literally just the thought of being alive and the fact that he has to breathe, the fact that he has to walk, the fact that he is being perceived by other people, it's so aggravating. He is so tormented by the fact that he is alive in that moment. Again, I don't know what this says about me, but I just found this book deeply, deeply relatable. I have so many moments, so many instances where I was like, is Sartre inside of my mind? I've had these thoughts before, and it's kind of creepy that a man, I don't know when this book was written, but like the 1900s, 1905, 1938. It's crazy that a man in 1938 was writing about thoughts that I'm thinking in 2023. But even weirder than that, it's the fact that these thoughts that I'm having are so bleak. And they're centered around a man who hates being alive. So, that's a little bit worrisome, but we move on. Our main character hates being alive, but it gets to a point where he starts to lose his grasp on reality. Like, it gets so intense that he starts to disassociate from whatever is going on. And every time that it happens, it gets harder and harder for him to get back to himself. And it's just this exploration again of the human condition. And like literally my mind is blanking because I don't really know how to talk about this book, except for the fact that it was a little bit too relatable, more than I care to admit. And it do be having some straight up facts though, like I can't lie about that. Something that I really enjoyed about this reading experience is the atmosphere that is created by our main character. Like his environment is so bleak and so isolating and lonely and dark and depressing that that's kind of how you start to feel. But like I'm okay, I swear I'm okay. I wasn't when I read this, but I am now because, you know, it's been a while. I've read some other books, so this isn't really in the forefront of my mind. I'm totally okay. But when I was reading this, the reading experience was so immersive. It kind of felt like I was experiencing this with him, which is terrifying, but I loved it because when you can lose yourself in a story and when it feels like you are an active participant of said story, it just elevates the reading experience to 1000. And that doesn't really happen with all of the books that I read. So when it does happen, I feel like I have to mention it because it just takes the word immersive to a whole other level. On the other hand, we also have The Stranger by Oliver Camus, which again, they do have similar themes, but in The Stranger, we have this added element of a murder. So a big chunk of this book takes place in the court where the judge and the lawyers are trying to understand why our main character would kill someone. Like they can't really comprehend the fact that our main character did this heinous act for no reason at all, even though that's exactly why he did it. So again, it's this exploration of just how absurd life truly is and how there really isn't that much meaning to life anyways. I gave both of these books 4 out of 4 stars and I would actually really recommend them, but please be warned, please be aware that you shouldn't read these books if you're currently struggling with finding meaning in your life, if you've been going through like a rough patch. I don't recommend that you read these books right now, but I also don't recommend reading these if you're like really happy, because then that's going to ruin it. So it's about finding that sweet spot where you're not really sad, but you're not really happy. I'm so sorry, this wrap up is very bleak apparently. I swear I'm not trying to be. I just really enjoyed my reading experiences with them, and if you've read these books, please comment down below your experiences as well, because I feel like these books are so interesting to try and analyze and discuss with other people. So please feel free to discuss them down below because I would actually love to talk about these books. And if you have any more books that are like these, please leave them down below as well, because even though I don't want another existential crisis, maybe I wouldn't mind it. I really don't know what that says about me, so let's move on. After I read those books, I definitely needed to switch it up, so I decided to pick up a more lighthearted book, you know, something that would remind me that, hey, life may have no meaning, but at least we still have romance books. So I ended up picking Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is the second time that I've read this book, and I actually read this at the beach, which I just love because it made me again feel like I was part of the story. And whenever they would talk about the beach, I was like, oh my god, I know what you're talking about. Like I can see it right in front of me, so thank you for that. And Beach Read, Emily Henry, I feel like Emily Henry is such a staple in the romance genre, but if you've never heard or seen this book, it's basically this story about this struggling author who usually writes women's lit or just contemporary novels. Recently, she's been struggling to write her next book because certain things have happened in her life and they've really hindered her creative process, and she just feels like she's in a rut, which is understandable. We've all been there. So she decides to go to this beach house, and one of her neighbors is actually another author that she's always low-key been competing with, even though they don't write for the same genre, but they've always been in each other's lives as competitors. And when they move in next to each other, they decide to start a little bet. I just love bets, you know what? Like they're so good. Like the tension between the characters when they're doing this bet is so good. Okay, so the bet is that they are going to switch genres to see if they can write different genres and different perspectives, and also it kind of works as like a jump start to their creative system. So he's going to try and write contemporary novels or like romance novels, and she's going to try and write historical fiction thriller type of book. Also, because of this, they also have to take each other on like research dates. It's not really a date, but like they take each other on different places to like help them understand the genre. So our main character, January, she takes Gus on like a festival and a carnival, and she's like, okay, this is a perfect place for a kissing scene, and this Ferris wheel is a perfect place for like a love confession. And on the other hand, Gus takes her on different interviews with people that have survived cults. So it's a very interesting contrast between these two people, but through all of their differences, they still have a lot of things in common, and the more time that they spend together, the more that their relationship blossoms and the more that their connection just grows deeper and more meaningful. Our main character, January, is also struggling with loss and grief, and I think that Emily Henry does a fantastic job at exploring those themes. And overall, I just loved it, okay? This is such a good romance book, and I just needed this, okay? I needed this, and I loved it, as you can see by the amount of tabs that I put on this book. I just needed this. I needed it. I read it, I reread it, I loved it. I did cry, but it was like happy tears, so it's okay. I love reading romance books, especially if they're written by Emily Henry. Anything that she writes, except Happy Place, please give me. The next book that I read was actually a surprise because I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and that book is Mary Oliver's Devotions. This is a collection of Mary Oliver's poetry, and oh my goodness, I fell in love. I have so many poems that spoke to my soul. I actually even dog-eared a couple of them because there were some poems that just struck me and they healed something inside me. I don't know, it was like this whole experience that I've never had before while I was reading poetry, and I think that Mary Oliver is up there with my favorite poets because, like, oh my goodness, does she have a way with words. Mary Oliver is probably nature's biggest simp, and I mean that in the best possible way. She loves nature so much, and I love the way that she sees, or she saw, the world. I think she's incredibly talented in seeing the beauty in everything, and I mean literally anything. Like, she can romanticize a rock, and I just think that's honestly beautiful. I had such a wonderful time reading this, and it serves as a very kind reminder to stop and smell the roses from time to time, quite literally and figuratively. It left me with a renewed sense of hope, and it also helped me see the world in a different way. Mary Oliver's writing helped create vivid images in my head. With every poem that I was reading, I saw what she was writing about. I could smell the flowers that she was describing. I could see, or I could hear, the creek that she was talking about. I don't know, it was just a very beautiful reading experience, and again, I've never had it with any of the poetry collections that I've read before, so I honestly felt like I was being transported into these poems. It also helped me remember that sometimes it's necessary to slow down, take a breath, and appreciate the things that are around us, whether it be nature or the people that we love. So I find myself wanting to go back to this book, even though I read it like a couple of weeks ago. I just kind of want to flip through my favorite poems and reread them whenever I'm having a bad day, or whenever I'm feeling down or feeling like, damn, life sucks, I don't really want to be awake right now, I wish I could just be in bed. I kind of just gravitate towards this book and read a couple of poems or a couple of lines, and I'm like, hey, maybe life isn't that bad. I just loved Devotions by Mary Oliver, and I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I thought it was going to be an okay poetry collection, and boy was I wrong. Oh my goodness. I would recommend this to literally everyone. If you're an avid poetry reader, or if you've never read a poetry collection in your life, I think this is an incredible place to start. This next book. Okay. I really don't want you guys to get mad at me, okay? I'm going to mention it briefly because I know that a lot of you were rooting for me to finish this book, And you know, a lot of you guys were excited for me to read it, and you were saying things like you're going to love this book, you're going to fall in love with his writing, it's going to be an incredible experience. And I didn't have that. That wasn't my reality. While I was reading this book, and then when I finished it, I was like, okay, so what am I missing? Like, why is this book a classic? Like, why do so many people recommend this book? Why do so many people love 100 Years of Solitude, or in Spanish, 100 Años de Soledad? I'm going to be staying real quiet about this one because I don't want to aggravate the masses. I don't want to insult anyone with my rating, so I'm just going to keep it on the down low. I just really wanted to let you guys know that I actually finished 100 Años de Soledad. I did read it in Spanish. I do have a couple of tabs, but nothing, you know, it's not I don't know. Before I go ahead and pretend that I never read this book and just hopefully forget about this experience, I did want to talk a little bit about it. Despite this book's reputation as a masterpiece in magical realism, I found myself struggling to connect with the story and the characters. It was confusing to keep track of all of the characters because they all have similar names, and I do know that this was done intentionally because it's to showcase how, since these people aren't learning from their ancestors' mistakes, we're just bound to repeat them. So that's why they have the names of the people in the past. So they're like, you know, history is just repeating itself. I understand it's like this cycle, and I understand that, you know, this man is brilliant or whatever. This convoluted approach to storytelling also hindered my ability to fully engage with the plot and to actually care about these characters. Like, some of these people were dying left and right, and I was just like, okay, well, next chapter or whatever. Like, nothing really impacted me, nothing really shocked me. I was just like, okay, this is another plot point, let's move on. Okay, what else are you going to do? So again, while I appreciate the influence that this book has had in the literary world, I just personally did not connect with it, and I personally would not recommend it to anyone. Different opinions are what make the world go round, so if I have to be the one to say that 100 Años de Soledad was just okay, then so be it. Yeah, I'll be your poster child for hating on this book. Something that I am proud of, and I do have to mention, is the fact that for the longest time, 100 Años de Soledad, alongside with War and Peace, used to be the book that I was most intimidated by. Like, just looking at this book used to send shivers down my spine, I kid you not. I was so scared of this book because, first and foremost, I wanted to read it in its original language, which is also my mother tongue, Spanish. I felt like reading it in English was just like a slap to the face, because obviously if I can read it in its Spanish original format, why would I read it in English? It just didn't really make sense to me. So it had that added stressor of having to read in Spanish when I don't normally do so. Another thing is that I've tried to read Gabriel Garcia Marquez before, and I just really struggled to connect to his storytelling and his writing style because it gets convoluted. He likes to be very descriptive. He uses a lot of flowery language, which is fine. We love beautiful language, but at times it just gets a little bit, you know, it gets tiring. It gets like, why does this paragraph need to be 2 pages long type of deal? Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm proud that I finished this book. Even if I didn't end up actually loving this book, I still feel pretty proud of myself. So I really wanted to share that with you guys. If you don't know what 100 Años de Soledad is about, I can't help you. Like, I can, but at the same time, I don't think I'm the best person to go to, because what I can tell you is basically we're following this family that's called the Buendía family, and they make a lot of mistakes, like a lot. You will never find another family that makes as many mistakes as this one. And we're just following their trajectory. There's literally this huge family tree at the beginning because that's how many characters there are. I'm sorry, where are you? And I'm so sorry. I can't stop myself from singing it every time that I say that. There's this huge family tree that I used to go back to, and if you see random dates written at the top, that's when they die. Or like, not random dates, but like random numbers, that's the page that they die in. I just thought it would be fun to keep track of that. But anyways, yeah, we're following the Buendía family as they repeat the past mistakes. and they just keep the wheel going. I also feel like there are a lot of parallels with the Bible, so that's something interesting that I thought I would mention. Yeah, let's move on. I don't really know what I'm saying about this book. I really needed a change of pace because that book took me, I think, a month, but it felt like I read it in the span of 5 because it was a lot of work. So after I finished 100 años de soledad, I was like, okay, I need a breather. Let me pick up some manga. Let me pick up a story that I already know that I love. So I picked up Yona of the Dawn and I read 5 volumes. I read volumes 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35. I'm kind of having an interesting relationship with Yona now because the first 20 volumes I devoured. I absolutely loved them, but the more volumes that I read, you know, the more 3 stars that are popping up. These first 3 volumes I gave 3 to 3.5 stars because I don't know, there's just something, I can't really quite pinpoint it, but I'm not having as much fun as I should have, or I'm not having as much fun as I was having in the first few volumes, and I don't know why. But in volumes 34 and 35, I did give those 4 stars. So maybe it's just like, you know, the story can't always be 5-star. It does have to have some dips and some ups and some lows. Hopefully it's just going up from now, but I also feel like it's a little bit delusional to think that all of the volumes are going to be 5 stars. I am interested in continuing the story because even though some volumes haven't been the greatest, I still love these characters and I still love the character arcs that are going on, especially with Yona. She has come such a long way from being just this sheltered princess that didn't really know much about the world, and now she's out here defending different villages, defending her kingdom, defending her life and her friends, and fighting for her country. It's just an incredible journey that she's been on, and I love that I've seen this growth with her. I also love Hak and the 4 dragons. I think that they bring such life into the story, and I love seeing them interact. They're always such a joy to be around, and I just love stories that have dragons in them. More on that later, but yeah. I only have 5 more volumes of Yona to catch up with the latest release, which is kind of sad because, like, what am I going to do when I reach chapter 40 and I don't have any more volumes to read? But that's future Bella's problem, so I'm not really going to be thinking on that too much. If you've never heard of Yona of the Dawn before, welcome to my channel. And Yona of the Dawn is basically about this princess who has lived her entire life inside of this castle, and she doesn't really know what's going on in the outside world. She doesn't know if there's like a war going on. She doesn't know the tensions between the different kingdoms. She's just kind of there to be pretty and have a good life. But all of that changes one fateful night where her dad is murdered by someone that is very, very close to her. Her life is turned upside down, and now she must learn to survive in this outside world that she knows nothing about. And in this journey of self-discovery and self-growth, she also meets some very interesting characters that actually turn out to be dragons. So that's a fun little twist. Yeah, I would actually really recommend Yona, and if you're not really into manga, you should definitely check out the anime. It's only 1 season, it's 24 episodes, but they go by like this. So make sure that you appreciate every single second because we're not getting any more. Another book that I've been reading for a pretty long time, I think I started in March and I've now officially finished it. I am very, very happy about that fact. And that book is The Collected Works of Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran. Yes, Khalil Gibran. The Collected Works of Khalil Gibran. Why am I struggling? The Collected Works of Khalil Gibran. This is a collection. Sorry, my brain is fried at the moment. But anyways, the author writes about themes like love and spirituality and self-growth and human morals and the human connections. It's all very grounded on the love for life and love for love itself. My favorite poems were definitely The Prophet and The Broken Wings. I think those 2 definitely showcase the author's talent for storytelling, and I just generally had a good time reading this. I wouldn't say fun, but I would say it was an insightful experience, and there were some lines and some moments that I just kept going back to because I love how the author was exploring certain topics, and I love the way that he would phrase certain things. So yeah, I enjoyed this collection. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I still had a pretty good time reading this. It was definitely a mixed experience because there were some poems and stories that I was like, okay, I see where you're going with this. I'm vibing with this. I love this. But then there were others where I was like, I don't really know what's going on and I wish we could move on. So because of that, I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is still pretty good. I would recommend it, but only like very specific poems. So do with that what you will. If you don't know, I actually have a Patreon where I host a monthly book club, and for June, we actually read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Oh my goodness, my dude, I loved this book. Oh my goodness, the hype is so real. I was so scared that because this book has been getting so much hype, both on Book Talk and Bookstagram and BookTube, literally anywhere that you can find books, you would hear people talking about Fourth Wing. And because of this, I was so scared to pick this up because I was like, it's impossible that this book is going to live up to the hype. But I'm so glad that I was wrong because, oh my god, this book does live up to the hype. And I am so incredibly grateful to my Patreons because if it weren't for them, I don't think I would have given this book a chance. I had so much fun reading this because yes, it includes dragons, and if there's one thing that I've learned this month is that I love stories about dragons, or like stories that include dragons. They just elevate the story and they make it oh so fun and exciting and exhilarating. That is definitely what happened with Fourth Wing. So in Fourth Wing, we're following this girl that's called Violet, and she's been studying her whole life to be a scholar. Because of something, she is suddenly forced to become a writer, which is definitely very different from the quiet life that she wanted to lead surrounded by books. Now she has to train with the deadliest of people in order to become a writer and to fight the war that is waging in her country. Now she has to train, now she has to surround herself with people that want to kill her because they want her spot, and she also needs to see if any dragons want to mate with her or like want to partner with her, which is also pretty deadly because dragons don't like weak writers. So if they deem you unworthy, they're just going to burn you to a crisp right on the spot, which is terrifying. But then we also have the other people that are trying to get you killed as well. So it's like a lot of threats are coming towards our main character, and she isn't the strongest of people, which is actually something that I really appreciated because I love when our main character isn't, you know, right off the bat super incredibly confident and like she is not like other girls. She can do what nobody else can. I appreciate when we can see a character arc. Our main character started off very, what's that word, insecure, and she just did not believe in herself. She didn't believe that she had the power to do this. She was, you know, she was convinced that she was going to die, and then to see her develop into this strong-willed woman and into this person that even though she may not have the best odds for her, she's still going to try her best. I really loved seeing that progression of her character. Not only that, I also love the side characters that we got to see, but especially, I feel like this is going to surprise no one, but I am a true Xaden simp. I'm sorry, I know that makes me extremely basic, but I love Xaden. I love him. Like, what can I say? I've fallen for his tricks. I would give my life for him. I would die for him, but I would also die for these dragons because these dragons are so, like, I love when dragons have a personality and they're not just like this strong entity that's flying over you. These dragons are so saucy and they are so snarky and sarcastic. It makes for some very good dialogue and for some very good scenes. And something that I really loved about this reading experience is that it felt like I was watching a movie in my head. Like, it felt so real. And so much so that I literally could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Like, my blood was pumping twice as much as it should have been, and my heart was like trying to beat itself out of my chest. It was insane. And I have a whole vlog dedicated to Fourth Wing. It's like 40 minutes where I'm just talking so long about my experience and like my favorite moments, my favorite scenes, my favorite quotes. It was incredible, and I am so happy that I have a vlog to show for it because whenever I miss Fourth Wing or like whenever I'm waiting for the sequel to come out, I can just go watch that vlog. I loved Fourth Wing. If you can't tell, I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars, 0 regrets, the hype is real, that's all I have to say. Then I read another reread, which I actually wasn't planning on reading it this month, but a couple of my friends mentioned it and I was like, I want to buddy read this with you. It's actually a visceral need. And so I picked up Mariana Zapata's All Roads Lead Here. I loved it the first time, and then the second time around, I loved it even more. This is a very comforting read. It's this romance novel of this woman who is struggling. Actually, now that I think about it, I've read a lot of books that deal with grief and loss. That was not planned. Anyways, our main character is currently dealing with a lot of grief over this person that she lost. It's a very important person and she's struggling with this sense of loss. She doesn't really know what to do with her life at the moment because everything is just, all of the plans that she had, they're no longer feasible, and she's just struggling to come to terms with her new reality. And because of this, she goes back to her childhood home, or like the closest thing to it. And when she goes back to that place, she's actually neighbors with a very grumpy man who does not want her there. But yes, this is forced proximity, which is an incredible trope that I haven't read enough about, but they are forced to be neighbors, and she has a very bubbly personality. She, even through everything that she's been through, she's still such a positive light, and she tries her best to remain lighthearted and to see the beauty in people and to not immediately or automatically assume the worst. So she's very much that. And then our other male main character, he is grumpy. Oh my god, this is a sunshine grumpy trope, or like the grumpy sunshine trope. I can't believe it took me this long to realize. Whenever I think of this book, it just gives me cozy vibes because there's a lot of hiking and there's camping and there's like a lot of mountains. There are a lot of wonderful moments between our characters, and also, again, I keep coming back to this because it is one of my favorite things about storytelling, and that is character development. I love the journey that our main character goes through, and I love how the romance is done because it's not rushed at all. I mean, Mariana Zapata is the queen of slow burn romance. I don't know if I would call her that anymore because I'm not actually interested in reading any of her other books, but All Roads Lead Here is definitely one of her best. If you're into slow burn romances, if you love the grumpy sunshine trope, if you love forced proximity, if you love, then you're going to love this one. It's just a really good time. Look at the amount of tabs that it has. Like, tabs don't lie to you. The tabs can never lie to you. I'm really happy that even though this wasn't in my TBR plans, I picked this up because it was just a it was a good experience and it made me happy. So as long as the books that I'm reading are making me happy, I have nothing to complain about. Speaking of happy, this is a nice segue. The next book definitely did not do that, but I still enjoyed it, and that is Notes from the Underground and The Double, written by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Why did I say his name like that? I don't know. I actually read this for a 24-hour reading challenge, so hopefully that video will be up soon and you guys can see me lose my very last brain cell. But yes, I read this in a 24-hour reading challenge and I enjoyed it. I definitely talk more in depth of this book in that challenge or in that video. I mean, if you know Dostoevsky, then you know that he truly loves to write about the most unhinged of characters, and he always succeeds because he has one of the darkest minds, or he has the ability to write about the darkest minds, not by Alexander Bracken. He has the ability to write the most despicable men, the bleakest of perspectives, but he does it in such a way that is so entertaining and so fascinating to read about. And in Notes from the Underground, we're basically following this man who has isolated himself from the rest of humanity, and he has terrible social skills, but he doesn't want to work on them because he is spiteful. He wants man to suffer, but he's also a coward. He also doesn't actually hate humanity, even though he does say that, but he thinks that it's cool to hate humanity, so he's like, oh, I hate everybody, humans suck, but then on the inside he's like, but I want to be a part of them. Like, I want to be part of society, but they don't like me, so I don't like them. It's a very interesting introspective read. And then in The Double, it's a little bit more thriller mystery type because our main character meets his doppelganger, and this doppelganger is trying to take over his life. He takes over his job, he takes over his home, he takes over everybody that he knows, and it's kind of like this irrational fear of, if people met someone that looks like me, would they prefer them over me? Like, it's literally the exact same person, but better. It's like you were God's draft, and then he's the final product, and you're like, okay, so should I just die? Like, what is the point of me being alive if there's already a better version than me? A very interesting book, if I do say so myself. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, because even though it did take me for a spin, even though my mind was kind of just like, what's that, spiraling? Yes, this book made me spiral. Even though I went through all of that, I still really enjoyed it. So yeah. The last 3 books that I read in the month of June, I actually read again for the 24-hour reading challenge. So I won't talk about them too much in depth. What? I won't talk about them too in depth. I won't talk too in depth about them. Yes, there we go, I nailed it. First try. I won't talk about these books too much, but of course I need to mention them to you guys because they did make up 24 hours of my reading month. Next up, I read the Monte Cristo manga. This was very interesting because I didn't even know it existed. Hold up, how can I, okay, there. This was very interesting. This was very interesting because I did not even know it existed, but it's basically the manga edition of the Cat of Monte Cristo, which, if you don't remember, or if you haven't been here since February, I actually read the Cat of Monte Cristo and I loved it. It's actually a new favorite classic for me. And I loved reading the manga edition because it was just like getting a chance to jump back into the story, not necessarily having to read the 1,000-page classic, and just kind of like seeing the Count in all of his murderous glory. He's honestly very, very sexy, and I really enjoyed coming back into this world and being with these characters again. It was a fun time. Yeah, you will see more of this in the vlog of the reading challenge, but this was good. The 2 audiobooks that I listened to this month were both by Riley Sager, the first one being Home Before Dark and the other one being Survive the Night. But I actually finished Survive the Night July 1st at 2 a.m. or like 1 a.m. So I don't really know if to count it towards June or July. Okay, I'll count it towards July. Yeah, fine. So I only read 1 audiobook this month, which was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. It's basically this story about this girl who grew up in a haunted house, or so her father says. He literally wrote a best-selling novel about this said haunted house, but she's never believed that the house was haunted. So when her father dies, she decides to go back to this house and just see if it's true, if this house is actually haunted, if the things that her dad wrote about actually are true. And when she goes into this house, she starts to realize that maybe some things are true. It definitely gives me Haunting of Hill House vibes, and I loved that show. So I had an interesting reading experience reading it. It's not my favorite Riley Sager, but it's not my least favorite, so do with that what you will. And then the last book that I read in the month of June, what a way to end the month, truly. I loved this book. This is another book that had so much hype. I thought it was honestly impossible that all of the hype was correct, but I am so happy that I was wrong. I'm so sorry that I ever doubted you. I love you so much. And that book is The Serpent and the Wings of Night, written by Carissa Broadbent. My goodness, my dude, this book was incredible. I have been in such a huge fantasy romance kick, and this scratched an itch that I didn't even know I had. Oh my goodness, this is a story of vampires, and our main character is a human that's brought up by vampires, and she's taught to survive in a world where she is basically the prey, and she's surrounded by predators who are constantly trying their best to kill her, but it's okay because she's been adopted by the king of vampires, so that's a pretty big armor to have, you know what I mean? Like, you're literally under the protection of the king of vampires, so she's doing okay. So in this book, there's actually a tournament where our main character, Oriya, she has to compete against her predators and win. And if she wins these games, it's not really games, it's more like different competitions. A lot of them are very violent and very deadly, and she somehow has to survive all of this. And if she does, and if she wins this tournament, she actually gets a chance to ask a wish from their goddess. I mean, when I tell you that this is just extremely action-packed and incredibly paced, like not a single page felt rushed, or I never felt like the story was dragging. I was always just having so much fun, and my blood was pumping, the adrenaline was boosting. Does that make sense? Adrenaline? No, I just felt like this boost of adrenaline when I was reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And again, the characters, I just fell in love with these characters. I fell head over heels in love with this story and this world and the atmosphere and the different types of people that we meet in our journey to survive this deadly tournament. I'm so happy that I got to vlog my experience, because it's literally just me fangirling over Oriah and Rain and the different things that they go through. And yeah, I just had a really fun time reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and I am definitely going to be reading the sequel and the prequel, or like short novella that's out. Yeah, July is going to be very scrumptious. So again, if you guys have any books that feel like this book feels, please leave them down below, because oh my goodness, do I need more of it. At times I was just annotating the whole page, because I was like, I love every single thing about this moment that I am reading about right now. I would honestly really recommend this book if you're looking for a good fantasy romance with vampires and badass characters that also have this vulnerable side to them. And the smut is amazing. I mean, what can I say? The smut is incredible. I'm not the biggest fan of smut. Like, I don't actively look for smutty books, but when they find me, I really appreciate that. These are all of the books that I read in the month of June, and I honestly had so much fun talking to you guys about them, because I just loved so many of them. And even the ones that I didn't love, I mean, it was still pretty interesting trying my best to talk to you guys about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I do love showing off my tabs. Like, I just love how it looks. So there we go. I read a total of 18 books in the month of June. Let me know how your reading month went. Did you find any new favorite books? Have you read any of these books? And if you did, please let me know if you loved them as much as I did. And if you didn't love them, I mean, also leave it down below. As I mentioned, different opinions do make the world go round, so I would love to hear yours. Once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please say it with me, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It really helps my channel out, like really helps it. It helps me keep doing what I love to do, which is these videos for you guys. I also have a Patreon where I post exclusive content. I host reading sprints and readathons and a monthly book club. So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, the link is down below. As always, I would love to have you join my army of premium simpers. If you're still here, please leave this emoji in the comments below so that I know that you stayed until the end and you're a true simp. Without further ado, that's the end of this video. I love you guys so very much, and I will definitely be seeing you next time. Bye.
Hey Jimmy, you nice. Keep going.